I never imagined the man I trusted most would betray me. But when I opened that door, my world shattered. My husband, my rock, was there, but not alone. And the person with him? Someone I thought I could trust more than anyone else. In that moment, every memory, every promise felt like a cruel joke. How could they do this to me? Emma thought she had it all. At 32, she was living a life she had dreamed of, married to her high school sweetheart, Michael, and raising their 6-year-old daughter, Lily, in a cozy suburban home. Emma and Michael had been inseparable since their teens, their love growing stronger through college and the challenges of early adulthood. Together, they built a life of comfort and stability, filled with laughter, family dinners, and the occasional spontaneous road trip. Emma prided herself on being a devoted wife and mother. She'd worked hard to balance her part-time teaching job and her responsibilities at home, ensuring Michael always felt loved and supported. Their relationship, though not without its ups and downs, felt like the kind of love most people only dreamed of. But lately something had changed. Michael, once attentive and affectionate, had become distant. He claimed work was stressful, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something else was wrong. He stopped texting her sweet messages during the day, came home late without explanation, and seemed preoccupied even during their rare moments together. Emma tried to dismiss her concerns, blaming herself for overthinking. After all, they'd been through so much together. She couldn't believe Michael would ever betray her trust. Enter Claire, Emma's childhood best friend, and a vibrant presence in her life since grade school. Claire was everything Emma admired, bold, confident, and endlessly charming. She'd been a constant source of support through Emma's life, even acting as maid of honor at her wedding. Emma often joked that Claire was like family, someone she could trust blindly. Claire had been staying with Emma and Michael temporarily after a bad breakup, helping out with Lily and lending Emma a listening ear during Michael's distant spells. Having Claire around brought some normalcy back to Emma's days, and Lily adored her. The three of them even joked about being an unconventional family unit. What Emma didn't know, however, was that the very foundation of her perfect life was crumbling beneath her feet. She couldn't see the subtle glances, the lingering touches, and the secrets hiding in plain sight. For now, Emma held on to the belief that everything was fine. But deep down, the cracks were already beginning to show. Emma began to notice the little things first. Michael's phone, once casually left on the kitchen counter, was now glued to his side or kept face down. Claire, usually bubbly and talkative, grew quieter whenever Michael entered the room. And then there were the whispered conversations Emma overheard late at night, muffled by the closed door to the study where Michael and Claire often claimed they were going over finances or discussing Claire's future plans. At first, Emma dismissed her unease as paranoia. Michael and Claire had been friends for years, and she trusted them both implicitly. But the nagging feeling in her gut refused to subside. One evening, as Emma folded laundry in the living room, she heard hushed voices drifting down the hallway. She couldn't make out the words, but there was an unmistakable urgency in their tone. When she stepped closer, the conversation abruptly stopped, and both Claire and Michael emerged from the study, their expressions tense. "Everything okay?" Emma asked, forcing a smile. Michael nodded quickly. "Yeah, just helping Claire figure out her next steps. You know how chaotic things have been for her." Emma tried to shake off the discomfort, but the following days brought more red flags. Michael, who had once struggled to find time for date nights, suddenly began leaving the house for work meetings on weekends. Claire, once inseparable from Emma during their coffee runs, started making excuses to stay behind. Even Lily seemed to pick up on the shift, innocently asking, "Mommy, why does Daddy spend so much time with Auntie Claire?" The breaking point came when Emma noticed Claire's perfume lingering on Michael's shirt. It was a distinct, floral scent that Emma recognized immediately. Her chest tightened as she tried to rationalize it. Maybe Claire had hugged him goodbye, maybe it was nothing. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it began to grow uncontrollably. One afternoon, while Claire was out running errands, Emma decided to confront Michael. "Do you think we're okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. Michael looked up from his laptop, startled. "Of course, why wouldn't we be? You've just seemed different lately." "Distant," Emma said, searching his face for any sign of guilt. Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Work's been stressful, Emma. That's all. You're reading too much into this." Emma wanted to believe him, but something in his eyes, a flicker of hesitation, made her stomach churn. Later that night, as Michael slept soundly beside her, Emma lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her mind replayed every suspicious moment, every strange interaction between Michael and Claire. Driven by a mix of fear and desperation, Emma decided to do something she never thought she'd have to do: search for answers. She waited until Michael was in the shower the next morning and picked up his phone, her hands trembling. It was locked, of course. Emma cursed herself for not knowing his passcode anymore. When had that changed? Later, while tidying up the living room, she caught sight of Claire's journal, left carelessly on the coffee table. It felt wrong to invade her best friend's privacy, but the unanswered questions gnawed at her. She hesitated for a moment before flipping it open. Most pages were filled with doodles and lists, but one entry stopped her cold. Sometimes I wonder if we're crossing a line we can't come back from. But I can't deny how he makes me feel. It's like we're the only two people in the world when we're together. I know it's wrong, but I can't stop. Emma's breath hitched, her hands trembling as she slammed the journal shut. Her world tilted on its axis, and suddenly, every strange moment made sense. The long conversations behind closed doors, the stolen glances, the lingering perfume. They weren't innocent coincidences. Her heart raced as she heard the front door open. Claire was back. Emma couldn't unsee the words she'd read in Claire's journal. They played on a loop in her mind, haunting her with their brutal honesty. But despite the growing knot of anger and betrayal in her chest, Emma decided to bide her time. She needed to be sure. She needed undeniable proof before she confronted either of them. Over the next few days, Emma watched them closely. She noticed how Claire's laughter lingered a little too long when Michael made a joke, and how Michael's hand would brush against Claire's arm in fleeting, yet intimate gestures. The tension between them was palpable, but they were careful to mask it whenever Emma was around. Still, Emma could feel the crack in their facade widening. One rainy afternoon, Emma's suspicions were confirmed in the most gut-wrenching way. She had taken Lily to a friend's birthday party and returned home earlier than expected, the sound of her keys jingling as she unlocked the door. The house was quiet, too quiet. Emma stepped into the living room, her heart pounding as she called out, "Michael? Claire? I'm home." There was no response. As she walked toward the kitchen, Emma froze. Through the slightly ajar door, she could see Michael and Claire. They stood close, their bodies nearly touching, as Michael brushed a stray strand of hair from Claire's face. "We can't keep doing this," Claire whispered, her voice trembling. But even as she said it, her hands clung to Michael's shirt, betraying her words. "I know," Michael murmured, his forehead resting against hers. "But I can't stay away from you. You're all I think about, Claire." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She felt paralyzed, rooted to the spot as she watched the man she loved, the man she'd built a life with, hold her best friend with a tenderness that was once reserved for her. The sound of her own heartbeat roared in her ears, drowning out the rest of their conversation. She didn't need to hear any more. Emma stepped back, her hands shaking as she turned and left the house, careful not to make a sound. She sat in her car, staring blankly at the rain-slicked windshield, struggling to process what she'd just witnessed. Her world had been turned upside down, and she didn't know how to piece it back together. Over the following days, the distance between Emma and Michael grew wider. Michael noticed her quietness, her distracted stares, but when he asked if she was okay, she brushed him off with a forced smile. She didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, Emma threw herself into a plan. She needed to confront them both at once, to strip away the lies and deceit that had poisoned her home. But Michael and Claire were too entangled in their own web to notice Emma's growing resolve. Their forbidden connection deepened with every passing moment. Late one evening, after putting Lily to bed, Emma overheard them again, this time in the kitchen. She stood at the top of the stairs, shrouded in darkness, as their voices drifted up to her. "Do you ever think about what happens if she finds out?" Claire asked, her voice laced with fear. Michael sighed. "I try not to, but I know we can't keep hiding this forever." "We should stop," Claire said, though the shakiness in her voice betrayed her doubt. "This isn't fair to her, or to Lily." Michael hesitated before responding, his voice soft and full of emotion. "I've tried to stop, Claire, but I don't think I can. I've never felt like this before, not even with Emma." Emma felt her knees buckle beneath her, and she clutched the banister to steady herself. His words were like a knife to her chest, cutting deep into the fragile remnants of her trust. She wanted to scream, to storm into the kitchen and demand answers, but she held back. The time for confrontation was coming, but not yet. The next morning, Emma acted as though nothing was wrong. She smiled at Michael over breakfast, even though the sight of him made her stomach churn. She chatted with Claire as they sipped coffee, though every word felt like poison on her tongue. Emma played the role of the unsuspecting wife and best friend, knowing it was the only way to uncover the full truth. That night, when Michael claimed he had to work late, Emma followed him. Her heart pounded as she trailed his car to a quiet hotel on the outskirts of town. She parked a safe distance away and watched as Claire's car pulled up beside his. Emma's worst fears were confirmed as she saw them enter the hotel together, their movements quick and furtive. Emma sat in her car for what felt like hours, tears streaming down her face as she tried to summon the strength to confront them. She thought about Lily, about the life they had built, and about the betrayal that had destroyed it all. By the time Michael returned home, Emma was sitting in the living room, waiting for him. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with the fire of someone who had reached their breaking point. Michael froze the moment he walked through the door. Emma was seated on the living room couch, her arms crossed, her face eerily calm. The TV was off, the lights dimmed, and the only sound in the house was the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Michael could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. "Late night at work?" Emma asked, her tone casual, but her eyes sharp and unforgiving. Michael hesitated, his keys still in hand. "Yeah," he said, avoiding her gaze. "Things have been crazy at the office." Emma let out a hollow laugh, the sound echoing through the room. "Really? Because I thought things were crazy at the hotel on Maple Street." Michael's head snapped up, his face pale. "What are you talking about?" "Don't," Emma said, her voice cracking but still firm. She stood, clutching her phone in one hand. "I followed you, Michael. I saw you and Claire go into that hotel. Don't you dare insult me by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about." Michael's jaw tightened, and for a moment he said nothing. The silence hung heavy between them, the weight of his betrayal crashing down like a tidal wave. Finally he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Emma, Don't you dare try to explain this away," Emma interrupted, her voice trembling with anger. "How long, Michael? How long have you been sneaking around with her behind my back?" Michael sank into the armchair, burying his face in his hands. "A few months," he admitted, his voice muffled. It just happened. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Emma's laugh this time was louder, harsher. "It just happened? You don't accidentally have an affair, Michael. You don't just happen to betray your wife and your daughter with the one person I thought I could trust." At that moment, Claire walked into the house. She froze in the doorway, her face going pale as she took in the scene. "What's going on?" she asked hesitantly, her voice wavering. Emma turned to face her, her eyes filled with fury and heartbreak. "Oh, don't play dumb, Claire. You know exactly what's going on. Or should I say what's been going on, for months now." Claire's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Finally she stammered, "Emma, I never wanted to hurt you. I swear." "You never wanted to hurt me?" Emma repeated, her voice rising. "You've been sleeping with my husband, Claire." "My husband? How could you do this to me?" "To Lily." Claire's eyes filled with tears and she stepped closer. "Emma, please, I didn't mean for this to happen. I care about you so much. This wasn't supposed to." "Stop," Emma shouted, holding up a hand to silence her. "I don't want to hear your pathetic excuses. Both of you, have destroyed everything. Do you even realize what you've done?" Michael stood, his face etched with regret. "Emma, I know I've hurt you, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Please, let's just talk about this." "Talk about this?" Emma repeated, incredulous. "There's nothing left to talk about, Michael. You didn't just cheat on me, you destroyed the life we built together. You destroyed Lily's family. Do you even care about her? About what this will do to her?" Michael's face crumpled, and for the first time, tears filled his eyes. "I do care. I love Lily and I love you, Emma. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I can't lose you. Please, just give me a chance to fix this." Emma's voice softened, but the pain in her words was sharper than ever. "You don't get to fix this, Michael. You don't get to break my heart, and then decide how to put it back together. You made your choice the moment you betrayed me." She turned to Claire, her voice icy. "And you were supposed to be my best friend. My sister. I let you into my home because I trusted you, and you destroyed that trust in the worst way possible. You don't deserve my forgiveness." Claire's tears fell freely as she choked out, "I'm so sorry, Emma. I'll leave. I'll go right now." "Good," Emma said, her tone cold. "I never want to see you again." Claire nodded, grabbing her bag and rushing out the door without another word. The sound of the door slamming behind her echoed in the now silent house. Emma turned back to Michael, who stood frozen, his face streaked with tears. "Emma," he said softly, stepping toward her. Please don't give up on us." Emma shook her head, tears streaming down her face. You gave up on us the moment you let her into your heart. I can't. I won't live like this, Michael. I deserve better, and so does Lily. Michael dropped to his knees, his hands clasped together as if in prayer. Please, Emma. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't leave me. Emma stared at him, her heart breaking all over again. She wanted to believe him, to believe that he could change, but she knew the damage was done. Their marriage, the life they'd built, was beyond repair. I need time, Michael, she said finally, her voice hollow. I need to figure out what's best for me and for Lily. Right now, I just need you to leave. Michael's face crumpled, but he nodded. Without another word, he stood and left the house, the sound of the door closing behind him marking the end of an era. As Emma sat alone in the silent house, she let herself cry, deep, heart-wrenching sobs that seemed to echo through the emptiness around her. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. She would never let anyone make her feel this way again. The house felt different after that night, quieter, emptier. For days, Emma moved through her routine like a ghost, trying to hold it together for Lily. She packed lunches, read bedtime stories, and smiled when she had to, but inside she was crumbling. The betrayal weighed on her like an anchor, and every corner of the house seemed to remind her of the life she thought she had, now irreparably shattered. Michael had moved out temporarily, staying at a friend's house to give Emma space. He called every evening, asking to talk, pleading for a chance to explain himself. But Emma ignored most of his calls. When she did answer, their conversations were short and strained, her pain too raw to confront him fully. Claire, on the other hand, had disappeared entirely. She left town the same night Emma confronted her, sending one final text the next morning. I'm sorry for everything. I hope one day you can forgive me. Emma deleted the message without replying. For Lily, the changes were confusing. Where's Daddy? She asked one morning as Emma brushed her hair. And why doesn't Aunt Claire come over anymore? Emma froze, struggling to find the right words. Daddy's staying somewhere else for a little while, she said finally, forcing a smile. And Aunt Claire, she had to go away for a bit. Is it because of me? Lily asked, her big brown eyes filled with worry. Emma's heart broke all over again. No, sweetheart, she said, pulling Lily into a hug. None of this is your fault. Mommy and Daddy just need some time to figure things out. But as much as Emma tried to shield Lily from the fallout, the cracks were impossible to hide. The once happy home was now filled with tension and uncertainty, and Lily's laughter became less frequent, her questions more probing. For Emma, the hardest part was the guilt. She kept replaying the past few months in her mind, wondering if there were signs she had missed or moments she could have acted differently. She hated herself for trusting Claire so completely, for letting her into their lives without questioning her intentions. But more than anything, she hated Michael for betraying the love and trust they had built over more than a decade together. Emma finally decided to confide in her sister, Rachel, who lived a few hours away. Rachel drove over as soon as she heard the news, her presence a much-needed comfort. They sat on the couch late into the night, talking and crying as Emma poured out everything she'd been holding inside. I feel so stupid, Emma said, wiping her tears. How could I not see it? How could I let this happen? Don't do that to yourself, Rachel said firmly. This isn't your fault, Emma. Michael made a choice, a horrible, selfish choice. And Claire? She's the one who betrayed you, not the other way around. But what about Lily? Emma whispered. How do I protect her from all of this? Rachel reached for her hand. You're already protecting her, Em. You're doing everything you can to keep her life as normal as possible. That's all that matters right now. Michael continued to reach out, insisting on joint counseling sessions to save their marriage. Reluctantly, Emma agreed to meet him with a therapist, not because she believed they could fix things, but because she needed closure. She needed to understand why he had done what he did, and whether there was any hope for a civil co-parenting relationship moving forward. In their first session, Michael broke down. I don't have an excuse for what I did, he admitted, his voice shaking. I was selfish, and I let myself get caught up in something that never should have happened. But it didn't mean I stopped loving you, Emma. I know I've ruined everything, but I want to fix it. For you, for Lily, for our family. Emma's response was measured but firm. I'm glad you're finally taking responsibility, Michael. But this isn't something you can fix with apologies and promises. You broke my trust, and trust takes years to rebuild. If it can be rebuilt at all. Over time, their sessions became less about reconciliation and more about navigating their new reality. Emma realized that while she still loved Michael in some way, she couldn't see a future where she could forgive him enough to rebuild their marriage. The pain was too deep, the betrayal too personal. After weeks of reflection, Emma made her decision. She would file for divorce. It wasn't a choice she made lightly, but it was one she knew she needed to make for her own well-being and for Lily's future. "I can't stay in a marriage where I feel like I'm constantly looking over my shoulder," she told Michael during their final counseling session. "I deserve to feel safe, to feel respected, and Lily deserves to see her mom happy." Michael was devastated, but he didn't fight her decision. He promised to be an active co-parent and to do whatever it took to make the transition as smooth as possible for Lily. Despite his mistakes, Emma believed him. He had failed as a husband, but she hoped he could still succeed as a father. The divorce process was painful, but it also brought Emma a sense of clarity. She leaned on her family and close friends for support, focusing on rebuilding her life one step at a time. She found a new job closer to home, one that allowed her to spend more time with Lily. She even started therapy herself, learning how to process her grief and rediscover her sense of self. One evening, as Emma and Lily sat on the couch watching a movie together, Lily turned to her and said, "I love you, Mommy." Emma smiled, pulling her daughter close. "I love you too, sweetheart. Always." In that moment, Emma realized something important. While her life had been turned upside down, she hadn't lost everything. She still had Lily, her own strength, and the chance to build a new, better future. And that was enough. Months passed, and Emma began to feel a sense of normalcy returning to her life. The pain of Michael's betrayal still lingered, but it no longer consumed her. Each day, she found herself growing stronger, more independent, and more focused on the life she wanted to create for herself and Lily. The divorce was finalized quietly, without drama or prolonged arguments. Michael moved into an apartment nearby to stay close to Lily, and they worked out a shared custody arrangement that allowed her to spend quality time with both parents. Though their relationship remained strained, Emma was determined to keep things civil for Lily's sake. She didn't want her daughter to carry the weight of their mistakes. In the quiet moments when Lily was asleep and the house was still, Emma often reflected on everything that had happened. There were times she felt anger. At Michael, at Claire, at the circumstances that had upended her life. But there were also times she felt gratitude. As painful as the experience had been, it had taught her valuable lessons about love, trust, and the importance of valuing herself. One evening, over a cup of tea, Emma's therapist asked her a simple but profound question. "What do you think you've learned from all of this?" Emma thought for a moment before answering. "I've learned that love isn't enough, not on its own. It takes trust, respect, and effort to make a relationship work. And when those things are gone, no matter how much you love someone, it's not worth sacrificing your peace or your self-worth." Her therapist nodded, encouraging her to continue. "I've also learned that walking away isn't a sign of weakness," Emma said, her voice steady. "It's a sign of strength. Staying in a situation that breaks you isn't noble. It's self-destructive. I had to leave, not just for me, but for Lily. She deserves to see what it looks like to choose yourself, even when it's hard." Outside of therapy, Emma found joy in the small things again. Taking Lily to the park, trying new recipes, and reconnecting with friends she had drifted away from during her marriage. She even started a journal, filling its pages with her thoughts, dreams, and the goals she wanted to achieve in her new chapter of life. One day, while flipping through the journal, Emma came across an entry she had written just days after discovering Michael's affair. It was raw, filled with anger and pain, but one line stood out. "I don't know if I'll ever feel whole again." Emma smiled faintly as she read those words, realizing how far she had come since then. She wasn't the same person she had been before the betrayal, but in many ways she felt stronger, wiser, more sure of who she was and what she deserved. In time, Emma found herself opening up to the idea of love again. She wasn't in a rush, she was content focusing on herself and Lily, but she no longer felt the walls she had built around her heart were impenetrable. She knew that when the time was right, she would be ready to let someone in again. And this time, she would choose someone who valued her as much as she valued herself. As for Michael and Claire, they faded into the background of Emma's life. Michael remained a dedicated father to Lily, but Emma kept their interactions strictly about co-parenting. Claire never reached out again, and Emma found peace in letting go of the anger she once held toward her. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but it did mean freeing herself from the weight of their betrayal. One night, as Emma tucked Lily into bed, her daughter looked up at her with sleepy eyes and said, "Mommy, are we happy?" Emma paused, her heart swelling at the question. She leaned down, kissed Lily's forehead, and whispered, "Yes, sweetheart. We're happy. And we're going to be just fine." And in that moment, Emma realized it was true. Her life wasn't perfect, and there were still challenges ahead, but she had found her way back to herself. And that was more than enough. If you were in Emma's shoes, what would you have done? Do you believe trust can ever be rebuilt after such betrayal? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more powerful and thought-provoking stories. Stay tuned. Our next story will dive into an even more shocking tale of secrets and heartbreak. You won't want to miss it.